Welcome to Code with Kurt, the channel where you can catch the latest Google Sheets and Google Apps Script videos. In today's video, we're going to talk about the HTML drop-down box using a Google Sheet list table here. And basically, we're going to create a drop-down like this from these values here. So as you can see, the Toyota Honda Ford showing up, but we're also going to put the value of that drop-down behind it too. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I select something, say Ford, we get a value of 3. Dodge, value of 5. So I'm going to show you how I put this together. Just taking a Google Sheet table here, and then we're going to populate the HTML file so you can see the output for the dropdown. So here I just have a table set up with Toyota, Honda, Ford, Jaguar, Dodge, and Lotus, and I have an ID assigned to them. That is it for the Google Sheet. Next, I'm going to take in the Google Apps Script, and we're going to look at the code. So the first one, what I have going here is I'm assigning my active sheets to SS. I'm assigning my car sheet to cars. Cars is my sheet name down here. So I'm assigning this sheet to car sheet. I'm getting the last row of car sheets. And then this last statement is I'm getting the range of what I want to copy and get the values for. And this is going to set this into an array for the return. So how this getRange does is you define the starting point. So I got row 2, column 1. The next one is how many rows. So I'm using my getLastRow, which is the last one populated. But I don't want to go 7 rows because I don't want the first row. So I'm going to go -1. So that's where I have that. And then columns is how many columns? 2. So we're basically taking this data and turning this into an array. That's our return. These next 3 functions here is to set up my menu for this over here. So if I X out here, here's my custom menu tab, my drop-down form, and that's what selects my HTML over here. So I can go in there, so I'm defining my form as my drop-down list, which is my HTML file name over here. And I'm setting it up as a show sidebar, so that's why it's showing up on the side over here. And then I'm doing my add menu, which is I'm setting up my menu tab as custom. I'm setting up my selection underneath that as drop-down form, and what function I'm calling is this start form, which is going to call this drop-down list, my HTML file, to pop up. And then the last thing I'm doing is an onOpen trigger. So when I open the file, it's automatically going to add that custom tab button up here when I open the file up, so it's available. So then I can select my HTML form over here. So that takes care of just the display and my function of getting the array. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the HTML file, which is here. And how do you start an HTML file is pretty simple. You go up to File, New, HTML file. You can click that. You have to give it a name. I'm just going to say test, because I'm going to go ahead and delete it. I'm just showing you how to create one. So there, I have my test HTML right there. But we're not going to use that, so this is what you get for the basic part of it. And what I added, this is the file I created for this screen, is I added this script code to it, all the way down here. And then I also added these 3 sections here. So the HTML code of it is this select statement. So I set up my select tags, my cars, and I set this on change, which is a trigger. So when I change it, it's going to display the value. Something you really don't have to have, but I use this as an example. And then what I'm doing with the script here, especially the load cars here, is I'm loading up that select statement with options from the Google Sheets. So I'm going to go through that. So the first function is what we're going to mainly focus on here. So the first function is load cars, and then I'm using this statement, Google script run user success handler function, and we're going to pass the array as AR. Now this is a Google Apps Script function that's used within HTML. This is not your standard JavaScript. This is a special Google Apps Script command that you call, and then on the bottom here is the finishing area of this command is you're using get list. Now get list is my function here. So basically it's calling this, it's getting all this data that we talked about earlier, and it's bringing it in right here. It's bringing that array in on as AR. So from there I am getting my cars object, which is my select down here as my ID. I define that as cars, so I'm getting that, and this is the command you use. This is JavaScript. Get element by ID cars. You got the object, the car select object. I got a console log here, which basically will display out my array within the browser, and I could show you how to do that later. I can show you how to do that later when we get started here. But this is a command you don't need. It's just more for debugging, and you can see how it works in the background. The next statement is I'm defining an option. So I'm starting to fill in the select statement with options. And the first one I'm going to fill is a blank one. I'm not going to put any information in that one. That's just kind of the starting one. So I'm defining my option. I'm setting the value to nothing. I'm setting the text to nothing, and then I'm appending it to my car select statement, which is this object here, my option. So that sets in the first blank one. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the array, the AR array, we're going to do a for each. So we're going to go through each increment of it, and it's going to pull out the item and the index. So when you do this return here, you get an array for cars and ID assigned to 0, and Honda and 2 is assigned to 1. Ford and 3 is assigned to 2, and that's how the array goes. So it binds an array with Ford and 3, binds an array of Honda and 2, and binds an array of Toyota 1. And I can kind of show you, once I run this, how that looks. But basically we're going to forget about the index. We're just going to take the item here. Again, we're going to find another option. We're going to do the first, or basically the second value in our item is the value, which is our ID, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to do the 0 of our item, which is the text, which is like the Toyota, Ford, Dodge. We're going to assign that to text, and then we're going to append it to our select statement. So we're going to do that for each one we have in that array. And that loads up our select statement down here. And then the next thing you have to do is to call that function. So we're going to do a little script down here, statement, and we're going to do load cars. So when this thing runs, it's going to come down over here, and then the last thing it's going to do is going to call the function to load all our options in our select statement. Now the second function I got is on select. Now I'm just doing this for more display reasons and stuff, but when you do an on change, when you change the select statement to a different value, I have it populating to this ID car value, and it's going to give you the value of the text you selected. So that basically 2 JavaScript commands to do that. You're getting your ID, your value of your ID. So I'm getting the value of this select statement, and it's car ID, and then I'm assigning it to the span HTML here, and I'm putting that in there in the inner HTML and assigning it to car ID. So basically that's this number below here. So when I say Ford, that 3 there is what shows up. And then there's one thing I could show you is, I'm going to call it again here. If I go up here and I go up to more tools, developer tools, and I look at the console and I see this array down here, array 6, this is what the data looks like that comes across to populate this. So when I say this is a array of 6, so there's array and then it's a multi-dimensional array. So then for this key 0, I have this array. For this key 1, I have this array. So that's the data that's coming through, and that's what I'm using to populate this dropdown. So that concludes this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below the video. Until next time.